it's just so impressive. It's not just only about the two drivers, right? Max Verstappen being the best there is at this moment. We talk so kindly about team strategy at Red Bull. Also, the pit stops that we saw on Sunday. I mean, 1.9 second pit stop for Sergio Perez as he came powering back from P9. He had an aggressive display in his driving on Sunday. I just think it's so efficient. It's so well done. And Helmut Marko was actually asked, is this the greatest Red Bull racing team ever? And he said, yeah, I think so, because of the efficiency and the ease in which things have happened. We've never managed to take 2 first places in the Drivers' Championship and win the Constructors' Championship as well. And that could happen clearly here in 2023. I asked the same question to you. You've covered the sport for very long times. Laurence, is this the greatest Red Bull team that we've ever seen?
Yeah, I think it is. But I think it's also, it's an evolution. All the teams in theory should get better over time. But right now, everything has come together to really work for Red Bull. So, they had a long period where they had an uncompetitive engine. When we went to these turbo hybrid engines, they had a Renault engine, and Renault just got it wrong to start with in 2014. And we know that Mercedes got it so right. So for a long time, they were pegged back a bit by this engine that just wasn't performing on the level that they needed it. Now they have that Honda engine, which we know is so good. So that's in place. But also this set of regulations that have come about, it's what we've learned in this 1.5 years is that it's so much about the car being drivable. You can add downforce onto a car. You can put theoretical performance on the car, but if the driver can't access it and there's issues, throughout the different ride heights, you have to run different circuits to deal with bumps and all that kind of stuff. If you can't get that right, then you're in a Mercedes situation or Ferrari situation where in theory the car has a lot of performance, but you just cannot access it, or the drivers aren't confident enough in it. Again, going back to that Lewis Hamilton pole position lap, he said the reason he was so good compared to the rest of the season is because he was confident in the car. But one thing that's very clear is that Red Bull have had this strength for some time. Even under the previous set of regulations, they really often focused on the drivability of the car and also putting it around Max Verstappen. So when these regulations came about, I was talking to a technical director the other day, and he was saying that it really was a case that they just really suited all of Red Bull's strengths. They really played to a lot of Red Bull's strengths. Now that's not to play down Red Bull's achievement, because they've done remarkably well there, but they've got all this knowledge, all this expertise, and it's been grown for such a long time. And then within that, you have the stability that comes with Christian Horner being there since 2005, Adrian Newey since 2006, two people that are so core to the performance of it. Helmut Marko as well, we should mention, he's worked so much on bringing, the best drivers through the system to their team as well. And now we've got Max Verstappen, who looks so unbeatable in that car. So all these things have come together, and it absolutely is the best Red Bull team of all time. But I think that's because, they really have worked incredibly hard and actually been a brilliant team for many years, but just had a few things holding them back.
Nate, when Mercedes was at its peak and they were winning back-to-back world championships, were they at this high level of performance from top to bottom? I mean, managers to drivers to pit crews to engineers, or is this a different level?
I think they were on a similar level. I think it's obviously Red Bull have taken those records, but Mercedes were pretty tantalizingly close to getting those. If you take out, Lewis and Nico Rosberg, they collided in Spain in 2016. Without that, they probably would have, Red Bull would probably be going after a record set by Mercedes that year, because that was one of the only wins they didn't take that season. So they, for especially 14, 15, 16, Mercedes were the team. It was 2 Mercedes drivers going for the championship. So I think they were, and I think that all the things Laurence just mentioned, which were absolutely spot on, were also hallmarks of that Mercedes team. From top to bottom, you kind of had, you couldn't see a weakness. And that went across strategy. It went across the way they were developing the car, the way just the way every part of the team and the Mercedes operations spread across 2 different factories. That was a huge part of them dominating in the V6 turbo era. And we're seeing now with Red Bull, they've got a blueprint of success. And I think a lot of other teams around Formula One could probably learn from that. If you look at, Laurence mentioned stability, and I think stability is a huge thing, not just in sport, but in business a lot of the time. The 2 teams with probably the best stability in terms of high-ranking personnel in motorsport, in Formula One, but maybe in motorsport as well, have been Mercedes and Red Bull. Mercedes have made a few more changes more recently, but you compare the changes they've made to the likes of Ferrari, McLaren, Alpine especially. I mean, you look at Alpine like on the other end of that scale, and all of that comes from the fact that every part of the team is working so well So why would you need to make changes? So Mercedes, it's hard to compare because I think, the records are going to go to Red Bull, but it's easy to gloss over the fact that Mercedes was so good for so long. But yeah, I think that they'll be kicking themselves now because I think a lot of those records were very achievable for that team. And the problem that they had that Red Bull don't have is that they had, for those first 3 seasons especially, they had 2 drivers who were really not just had personal beef between them, but actually were pretty close on the racetrack for a lot of that time. So kind of ruined their chances of having those records. But yeah, they were pretty amazing when they were at the top as well.
As much as Sergio Perez has been criticized for his lack of performance over, the past 2 months, especially in qualifying, maybe it's actually a good thing Christian Horner doesn't have that kind of headache presented before him every single weekend. Also, Red Bull has claimed that they haven't unlocked the full potential of their upgrades just yet. So take that for what you will. Moving forward for the rest of the season. Yeah, no doubt.
Thanks so much for watching ESPN on YouTube. And for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for premium content and live streaming, subscribe to ESPN Plus.